Jim Rohn also said this. He says the distance between dreams and destiny is called discipline. That where we want to be, where we want to end up, the things we want out of life, it comes down to what we discipline in. I must be preaching, boy. All right. So when we when we understand that whatever we discipline about, and think about it, like it's like some of y'all look like y'all got up and went to the gym this morning, right? Who always got up and worked out this morning?
Maybe I'm going after.
Oh, maybe going after. Are you making plans to go to the gym, right?
Yeah.
Now, the thing about it is this. I know this for me, like I was upset. Like I had got on this good workout regimen and then I got sick. So then my regimen, and this always happens to me. I start, I'm good, I'm going, and then I get sick and then I fall off. So now tomorrow I got to start back up again. But nobody has to force me to get up and go out there. Nobody's putting a holding the gun in y'all head and say, listen, if you don't go work out, it's the end, right? Why? There's a desire inside your heart for whatever reason to lose weight, to stay in shape, to be fit, right? Why? Because we know that how our body feels dictates what we can do with our body, right? When our body is limited, we are limited. When our health is affected, we are affected. One of the biggest things you will find out, it don't matter how much money you do or don't have, if your health jacked up, you can be a multi-billionaire. You can't spend a dime, right? So we make sure that we are intentional about taking care of ourselves as far as our health. We try to eat healthy, change the way what we eat and what we drink and all those things, because we starting to get to the point of realizing that my health affects everything else I can do with my life. If I'm in better shape, I can work harder, I can work longer, right? So all these things, my concentration may be better, I feel better overall, right? So all of these things come down to discipline. So y'all know it's a scripture that talks about the importance of that, but it's related to a spiritual part. If y'all want to turn to 1 Corinthians 9:25, so I'm basically going back to the points of the street, but I'm doing pretty good. I've only been at this for 15 minutes, so I'm running through it pretty good. 1 Corinthians 9:25 through 27. Now it's going to be in the back. It's going to be past. It's going to be
24.
Okay.
Yeah. So you said chapter 9 and what else?
Verse 25 through 27.
Okay.
All right, so
At the bottom.
right. So I believe this is Peter.
It's at the bottom. 624.
Page 624. All right, so here's what he's saying. I believe this is Peter. He says, now, chapter 9, verse 25, 27. He says, now, I do this all because of the gospel. So first of all, he's giving you the reason why he does this. He says, so that I may share in the blessings. So this is his why, this is his how. So that I may share in the blessings. Now, here's the what. Don't you know that the runner in the stadiums all run the race, but only one receives the prize. Run in such a way to win the prize. Now, everyone who competes exercises self-control in everything. So let's stop right there. So Peter said he's saying, listen, I do this for the gospel. I do this for the gospel. I do it to share in the blessings. Do you not know the people who race in the Olympics? Because he was talking about, that's why he said they say stadium. They all run, but only one person receives the prize, right? Everybody gets in the race. But he says, run is one that wants to win the prize. Run is as if you want to win, you desire to win. He says, but the biggest thing is this. He says, everyone who competes, it exercises self-control in everything. If a runner is going to run, they have to exercise a certain level of self-control, right? Because if you're going to run, first of all, you're going to get out and run, especially talking about long distance or short distance. You know, if you've ever run track, I remember I ran track in high school. That was some of the hardest conditioning I ever had in my life. It was not even remotely close. What's going on, Christian? It was not even remotely close to football conditioning, because all we did is run all the time. Run. We never stopped running, right? But that was because we had to be conditioned, right? So, but in order to do that, in order for me to do that, had to have self-control, right? So Peter's saying run as such. Then he says this. He says they do receive. He says they do it to receive a perishable crown. So the reward that they get perishes. But then he says this. He says, but we an incorruptible crown. So what we get in return for running this spiritual race with self-control is an incorruptible crown, which the Bible says that when we get to heaven, that we will receive a crown. And in that crown, there will be jewels, but those jewels will be based upon what you did here. See, there's a reward. That's what people don't understand. There is a reason to live this life the right way. Everybody is not going to get the same reward. It's going to be based upon what we've done here. So then he says this. He says, so I do not run like one who runs aimlessly or boxes like one who beats the air. So he's saying, don't just shadow box, right? He said, instead, I discipline my body to bring it under strict control, so that after preaching to another, I myself will not be disqualified. So basically what he's saying is this. He says, don't just do this to act like you in it. If you're going to fight for real. Fight. Why? But he's saying this. He said, because even as a boxer, so this is one of my second favorite sports. Even the training I do at home, I do boxing training because I just love it, right? He's saying, listen, if you're going to train to win. Don't just fight the air. Fight the fight. He says, instead, I discipline my body and bring it under strict control. The greatest thing you ever find out about boxers is great boxers have great discipline. Muhammad Ali, Joe Louis, Mike Tyson when he was in his prime, even Floyd Mayweather will tell you about the discipline that he has to have when he starts training. So this is what God requires of us in this walk. That same, if you think about it, if you ever watch the Rocky movie, if you watch Rocky 4, if you think about the discipline, it was nobody that, even Rocky's wife didn't even believe that he could beat the Russian. Rocky had to have faith in himself, right, to believe that he can go out and do it, right, to the point, and I wanted to wait till we was together to even bring this up. I didn't even do this last week. Think about what he gave up. When they asked him, they said, they asked him and said, is this for a title? He says, not for a title. Is it for money? No, it's not for money. This is just to avenge my death of my friend Apollo. He was just going over there not only to prove that, it had something to do with the Cold War, but at the same time, because that dude killed Apollo, right? So he went over there to fight to avenge Apollo. He gave up everything, because if y'all ever seen Rocky 5, when he came back Rocky 5, he was broke. He like, you know why? Because when he went over there, he lost. It wasn't a commissioned fight. So he literally lost his license to box by going over there to fight that fight, because it wasn't a commissioned fight. So he gave up his wealth, all his ability to earn money as a boxer, right? So, I mean, they still had the little restaurant or whatever. But the thing is that he gave that up. But when you look at that discipline that he went through, what he did to his body, how he had to put on muscle and all these different things. When we look at that, if you can take a picture of any Rocky movie you ever seen where Rocky is training and the discipline and the heartache and the hurt and the pain and him running down the street with the kids, all those things, that's how God expects us to walk in our spiritual, to treat our spiritual life. That same level of discipline, that same willing. Because guess what? As a believer and as a Christian, it's going to hurt sometimes. You're going to get hurt. There's going to be some pain. There's going to be some disappointment. There's going to be some letdown. You're going to lose some fights. But you don't give up. You don't quit. You're not going to go undefeated all the time. You're going to have some blemishes on your record. But you don't stop fighting. And that's what God is saying to us spiritually. Fight. And then he's saying this at the end, and I'm gonna move on to part 4. He says this. He says after under strict control, he says, so after preaching to another, I myself I won't be disqualified. So I want to know that after I preach and say all this, because I live a disciplined life. Because when somebody says something, it's the worst thing in the world, we all can probably attest to this in some way, is to hear somebody preach about something and then see them doing something that we know is contrary to the word of God. We call that a hypocrite. So basically he's saying, I don't want to be hypocritical. So I bring my body under discipline. So without discipline, you set yourself up to be hypocritical. It's like when you go to the gym, the people that's in there that's not working out, they're just in there checking everybody else out that's working out. They've been a hypocrite. You ain't come here to work out. So that's the whole thing. That's what Paul's saying. I don't want to disqualify myself because I'm not exercising discipline. Everybody got that so far? This is the importance of accepting and walking in obedience. So, all right, let's jump down. I'm going to jump down to part 4, so we're going to get into part 4. I'm trying to wrap this up. So I call it part 4 this. Get ready for the upgrade. Get ready for the upgrade. When you do it, once you learn to be obedient, and then you, once you learn to be obedient, and you learn to walk in discipline, all of a sudden, you ready to take that next step. You're ready for the upgrade. You're ready to go to the next level because you've now completed basic training. Boot camp, spiritual boot camp. First, you got to learn to obey. Because listen, when you go to boot camp, if you don't obey the rules, you ain't even gonna last there. You might as well pack it up and leave. That's the first thing you're gonna do. The first thing you're gonna do is break your will. But they can't break your will unless you're willing to listen to their rules, right? So then once they break your will, now they teach you their disciplines. They teach you their military disciplines, right? Well, Lord don't give us cover, don't cool down a little bit out here. Thank you. All right. So then this is what I said under that. I said, and the first thing you got to do if you're going to be ready for the upgrade is you got to do this. You got to be willing to be the example and kill the excuse. This is a quote. That was one of this quote. This is a quote that I think carried me through a tough part of my life. Is I had to learn that I got to stop complaining. I got to be willing to be the example so that I kill the excuse. How powerful is that? Because basically what happens is this, and y'all can take this into y'all professional life, any part of y'all life. When you're the example at work, everybody else that's making an excuse not to do it looks at you and say, you know what, I have no excuse because if they can do it, I can do it. Jesus came to be the example for us so mankind couldn't have an excuse not to follow the word of God. Because before that, people had tried. And some of them had did good, but some had failed. But Jesus said, I'm going to show you how to live a perfect life. Not that you're going to be able to do it, but that you have no excuse to say that it's never been lived out in front of you. And that's what God has required of us. He requires us as believers to be the example so that we kill the excuse for the rest of mankind to say, this can't be done. I'm conscious every day that I have to be an example. So people around me say that there is no excuse. Because you know what people are looking for when it comes to Christianity? They're looking for an excuse. They're looking for a way out. They're looking to find somebody to point a finger at and say, Shirley, I saw you doing this. So if you did that, that means that I don't have to walk it out the way to walk out. What you're saying about Christianity can't be true because I watch you fail. Now, I'm not saying you're not going to make mistakes. I'm not saying you're not going to struggle. But our struggles are supposed to be so minute. Our error is supposed to be so small that the only people that really know about the errors and the flaws that we have is supposed to be the people who live in the exact same house of us and God. Nobody in the world is supposed to be able to look at us and say, see, that right there, that's why I ain't doing this God, man. It happens. And a lot of us have been hurt by people who have not been that example. And what did they do? They gave us an excuse. So when we're not being the example, we give people an excuse. And so that's why we have to learn to be obedient and disciplined. Because when we learn to be obedient and disciplined, we become that example. Now the thing about it is this, once you start living it, you can't stop. Once people know you own it, you can't get off of it. And that's what happens. A lot of people get on this and they're like, oh man, I'm going to church. I'm changing my life around, giving my life to God, blah, blah, blah. Then next thing you know, and they don't understand, this is the powerful part about it that y'all don't understand. The minute you confess this, what happens is that a spotlight hits you. There's a spotlight that hits you. And when that spotlight hits you, you got to be ready for the bright lights. You got to be ready for it. A lot of people not ready for it. Listen, the minute you confess Jesus, you might as well go ahead and say, put on a shiny suit that says Christian across the front of it with a target on the back. Because that's exactly what just happened. Because the world is now like, fixated on you and what you do, how you handle things, what you say. Now, people, everything. Huh? Say that again. It is a battle for souls. The whole entire thing is a battle for souls. And you have to realize you are enlisted in God's army. And so as a soldier has to be disciplined, you have to be disciplined. It's the same thing. And the Bible even talks about that. That's why it talks about putting on the armor of God. Because if you don't put that armor on, you're gonna find there's gonna be a weakness somewhere. You got to get up every morning. You got to put on the helmet of righteousness, the helmet of salvation. I'm sorry, the best plate of righteousness, the shield of faith, shoes of the gospel. You got to pick that stuff. You got to have the sword of the word. All those things. You got to carry that stuff on you every day. You got to put it on. Because we in a battle. We in a war. Because everywhere y'all go, there's somebody that needs Jesus. You just don't know who that person is. But God may tell you, they lay it on your heart, Michaela. Go say something to this person. You be like, what? Go say something to this person. And when you go talk to them and you start talking about Jesus, first thing that's going to happen for you ever, like 5 words into your conversation, they're going to start thinking about, how does Michaela act? How does she carry herself? If they can't really find any fault with you, they'll listen to you. You know what happens when you start trying to talk to people about Jesus and they can think about 5 or 6 things that they seen you do that they disapprove, that they know is probably not that becoming of a Christian, you automatically start losing your testimony. And that's how important it is to live this out. That's why it's important to be an example. And so this is the hardest part of doing what we do. So now I'm gonna help y'all. Let's get this upgrade going. All right, now y'all want to open y'all Bible back up. I need y'all to jump back to John chapter 15, verses 11 through 15.
What's the page number?
Oh, they'll tell you. Y'all going right back to where y'all was at. Y'all just going down.
Chapter 589.
Can you help your brother out down here?
589.
No. All right, 589. All right, I'm reading this. Okay, so I'm reading this in the same Bible, y'all. Does anybody want to read it?
Okay, chapter.
First, chapter 15, verse 11. So anybody want to read that?
I have told you these things so that my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete.
Stop right there. Say that again.
I have told you these things so that my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete.
Now, what is he referencing to? He references the verse, everything verse 10 and above. So now he's giving them confirmation on what he's saying in another explanation. Go ahead, keep going, Christian.
This is my command. Love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down his life for his friends.
Stop, pause. All right. Woo! All right. So we're talking about being an example, right? Jesus just told them this. He says, I have told you these things so that my joy may be in you and yet your joy may be complete. So when we begin to become that example, there's a peace that comes over us because you know that you are in line with the word of God. You're living out the right life to the best of your ability with God. All right? Now, he says this. He says, these are my commandments, that you love one another. Now, how do I get to a point, Chad, that I really, with everything in me, I want to be a believer. I want to be a Christian. I want to be a liberator. How do I get to that point in my life? I get to that point because I realize that this is my command, that ye love one another. It's love. It goes back to what I said earlier, right? It's a heart condition. Discipline is an attribute of love. If I love God and I love people, it forces me to want to live a disciplined and obedient life because I realize when I fall, when I don't, when I err in a big way, I cause other people to stumble. We create the excuses of other people not to live this life when we're not being the example. But if I love God so much that I know I want to draw. See, when you love, that's why you have to fall in love with God. That's why salvation is synonymous with marriage. When you say that sinner's prayer, you're making a vow to God. You're making a vow with him. There's a covenant that's taking place, right? And in that covenant, there is like the covenant between a husband and a wife. And what happens is that if I love my spouse so much, I don't want to disappoint her. I don't want to let her down. I want to make sure that I'm doing everything in my power to make sure that, not because I'm trying to prove myself to her, but that she knows without a shadow of a doubt that I love her. Right? And it's the same thing with God. We don't do these things to prove ourselves to God. This is how we show God that we love him, because Jesus said that in the previous scripture. Y'all following me so far? So then he says this. He says, no greater love is this, that you lay down your life, that a man that he lays down his life for his friends. Is he saying that he wants you to? Now Jesus is talking about the fact that, okay, he's going to, this is before he went to the cross, right? So he literally laid down his life for us. But what is he asking us to do? He's asking us to come second. He's asking us to lay down our selfish desires, our fleshly desires, all the things in our lives that would cause people to stumble, lay those things down so that you can now draw people to me. This is how you begin to go to the next level, when you realize that it's not about you, that it's all about Jesus. And that if it's really all about Jesus, then everything in your life should be reflective of him. How did the Lord give it to me? How I want to say it? Here you go. He said, the Lord gave it to me like this today. He said that whose opinion matters the most in your life? Is it the opinion of others, or is it the opinion of Jesus? See, when Jesus' opinion of you is the most important opinion, then everybody else's opinion doesn't matter at all. But the beautiful thing about it is when you start living by the influence of the opinion of Christ, people who like you, don't like you, still will have nothing to say about you. And the Bible talks about that. He says men will have something against you, but they will have nothing to charge you with. Same thing with Jesus. They had something against him, but Pontius Pilate couldn't really charge nothing to Jesus, to the point he washed his hands with it, and he let the Jews decide whether or not what they wanted to do. He said, I can't find no guilt with this man. Though people will hate you, be innocent, because you live this life the right way. I could go, if we go past this, it gets and start talking about that. So then he says this, he says, you are my friends. He says, you are my friends if you do what I command you. He says, I do not, so this goes back to the thing we was talking about slavery. He says, I do not call you servants anymore, because a servant does not know what the master is doing. I call you friend because I have made known to you everything that I have heard from my Father. Don't go there. Please don't jump to that next scripture. It's the next part. I had to do it. Yeah, it is. And listen, I saw it and I said, I was like, the Lord was like, no, just don't go there. So we might end up going there, but I'm trying to get here to wrap up, because it's going to be the next part of this. It's part of part 5. And if I go into that, it's gonna open up a can. So so he said, I'm serious. So he says that. So these are some questions I want to ask y'all. First of all, what is the purpose of an example? Somebody look up. Anybody Google the word example. Siri, what does example mean?
As a noun, it means a thing characteristic of its kind or illustrating a general rule. Do you want to hear the next one?
Yeah.
Yes.
As a noun, it means a person or thing regarded in terms of their fitness to be imitated or the likelihood of their being imitated. Do you want to hear the last one?
Yep. Yes.
As a verb, it means be illustrated or exemplified.
Siri preaching.
The last one.
The last one was the best one, right? He said to be what did it say? What did she say?
Be illustrated or exemplified.
Be illustrated or exemplified. So what is an illustration?
Well,
Somebody look it up real quick. What is an illustration?
Interesting question. Big Daddy, yum yum.
Oh.
I knew it was coming. I was waiting on it.
Siri can't be telling our business like that, man.
Okay, it's a picture illustrating a book, newspaper, etc., or an example serving to clarify or prove something.
I like that one. Say that one again.
An example serving to clarify or prove something.
All right. So Siri told us that an example is an illustration. An illustration just told us it's something that creates clarification, right? It's an image that creates clarification. So when I ask you guys, what is the purpose of an example? Now, when that comes to your mind, what do you think?
To clarify.
What are you clarifying?
one more time.
Huh?
You just say it one more time.
Yeah,
You want me to say that again?
Yeah.
All right. So Siri said that an example is an illustration, right? Illustration says that illustration is created to bring about clarification. So an example brings an illustration, and illustration brings about a clarification.
Okay.
What is the purpose of an example?
To show you.
Okay.
Clarify the lifestyle that you got y'all.
Okay.
To clarify how something should be.
Clarify the word of God.
Okay. Right. So Straight up. That's it. The purpose of an example is to give somebody a clear illustration of who you are and what you believe. That's the purpose behind an example. A clear, I would write that down if y'all could. It's a clear illustration. It's to give somebody a clear illustration of who you are and what you believe. Because the examples that you leave behind are totally based upon your beliefs. The examples that we are totally based upon the beliefs that we have at this very moment in our life. Everything we do is based upon what we believe. If we believe that punctuality is important, and I'm saying this for all of us because we was all late this morning. Yeah. If we believe that punctuality is important, we get here on time. If we feel that it's an option, we don't. Right? If we believe that treating people with kindness is important, we do it. If we don't, we take it as optional, right? So what Jesus is saying to us is this, is that if you understand the purpose of being an example for me, then now you move from being a servant to being a friend. It's like this. Think about it like this. If you sitting, hallelujah, if you sitting at a restaurant, right, and the server comes up to you and they're rude, or they nonchalant about their job. Hey, Michaela, how you doing? Oh, I know I'm here to read that. What can I get for you? Can I have this? Okay, I'll be right back. They don't ask you how you doing. They don't ask you what you want to drink. Do you want that with ice, without ice? They don't try to find out exactly what you need. They don't make it personal. We leave big tips for waiters that make our experience seem personal, don't we? For the waiters that don't, forget about us, they walk off, your drink get down to nothing, you sipping on ice. You don't call those people back. You don't give them people a big tip, right?
What's this?
Why? Because they acting like a servant instead of acting like a friend. And what God is saying to us is this: don't act like us. Don't if you want to understand and be befriended by me. What did he say? He said, if you said to be, what did it say? It's to be. If you want friends, show yourself to be friendly. If you want to be a person that builds relationships, you got to be relational. A person that doesn't build relationships because they don't show themselves to be relational. So Jesus is saying that to us at the same time. He says, I don't call you a servant anymore. Because now that you understand that you got to obey my word, you also understand that you need to be disciplined in the obedience that you show me. Now that you fully understand who I am, what I call you to do, because you're going back to that first verse we said, if you abide in me and my word abides in you, now you begin to become an example to others. And you're being that example not because I'm forcing you to be that example. You're being that example because me and you are in a relationship. We are in unity. And because you know how good I am, you want other people to know how good I am. And now you begin to befriend them. But the first thing you have to do before you can befriend somebody is you got to be willing to serve them. That's what this walk is about. Being a Christian is first of all willing to be a servant. If you look into the Bible and you start looking up the word pastor, it's a servant. I had to be willing to serve y'all. Even when y'all worked with me, the first thing I ever did before I ever had any type of relationship with any of y'all is I served y'all first. I humbled myself to you in your needs. I found out what it is you needed from me in order to help you be successful. I have to be willing to serve. Though I may require something of you, if I'm not willing to serve you, how can I ask something of you? See, that's the selfish way of man. What man says is this: give me what I want from you, regardless of even if I know what you need. But God says, no, I sent my son here to serve. Jesus, before he did it, he served the disciples. He showed them how to be servants so that they could serve mankind. The purpose behind Christians is to serve mankind. Regardless of whether or not mankind accepts what we do or not, it does not matter. Our job is to serve, because in the midst of servitude, when we start going out, y'all, we start feeding the homeless and going out to people in neighborhoods that are struggling and everything. Nobody's not going to allow you to befriend them if they don't know you, if you're not willing to serve them. The fastest way to get to somebody and allow them to speak to them and minister to them is you got to serve them first.
Oh, that's why he calls them servants first and then friends?
Yes.
Even though he chose.
Right. Because how on earth do you befriend if you're not willing to serve? Before y'all ever, the first time y'all met my daughter, what did the first thing she do to y'all? She served y'all. She served y'all. And then from there, she was able to have a conversation with you and start building a friendship. And the same thing with my wife. When y'all first got on, what was my wife when y'all first came to my house?
In the kitchen.
She's in the kitchen, right? Kicking grease. No, we can bring them. We'll talk about that later. All right, look, so anyways, I say that to say this to each and every one of y'all. And I'm wrapping up in this because we could go further. And okay, so now we already talked about how important it is to have an example, because we just talked about that. How do you develop into a righteous, clear example? Pretty much just talked about that, so I'm answering all the questions. How do you stop? What is stopping you? This is my question in closing. What is stopping you from becoming an example? Yes, sir.
Boy, be a rock star. I want to go to Hollywood.
Think about it like this. Do they need more people like they trying to, that they want you to be, or do they need more people that are not like that are more like you are now? Because I can tell you this, I know a couple pastors in Hollywood. The thing they need more than anything is real people. They need real people who have a real relationship with God. So that is what you should desire. It don't mean that God can't take you to Hollywood. It's just when He take you there, He's gonna take you there to serve, so that you can befriend people, so you can bring them in. Because people in Hollywood need Jesus. Bad. Right? But people everywhere need Jesus. And sometimes we think that because we can't go in the way we think that, see, the enemy always wants to offer you the fast route to get them, right? But when they're in the fast route, you lose your example.
Surrendering to someone.
Right. It's hard. So that's the hard thing about this. But you can get there the way God wants you to go there. You may have to take a couple of detours. It may take a little while. But when you get there, and that spotlight is as bright as it possibly can be, you can be that real example and bring a lot of people to Jesus. Because guess what? Whatever they would give you if you weren't the example is going to fleet and die and burn and go away. But eternity, when you get to heaven and you look around and you say, man, and God showed you, because you was obedient to me, because you was disciplined to who I had called you to be, because you was willing to serve me, look at all the friends you bought. Look at all the friends you made. Look at all these people here. Had you not did this, not saying they wouldn't have made it here, but they wouldn't be on your account.
It's not a telescope.
And that's how you gotta see it. Whoever He's called you to reach, you're gonna reach Him. And He's gonna give you whatever He's put into you, that's the way you're gonna reach Him. But you just gotta be patient and allow Him to get you there, and He will. Just be obedient. It's okay. It's all right. And it's okay. And realize that this is not, because you know why? You're accepting His plan. You have your plan, and you know you can make your plan pop off like that, right? But deep down inside, you know good and well when you got there that the real you wouldn't be the example you want to be. And it will bother you, it will rock you to your core. And guess what? The most, think about who they are, because of the way they was brought up and who God they was. They got there, and when they got there, it was so disappointed that their careers were cut short and they never wanted to touch it again because they realized that it's not what they thought it was. You do better to get there being you and who God has called you to be. So when you get there, you can be on fire. You can bring it, and the people you think you're gonna touch them in a whole different way.
I don't remember the artist's name, but there was one that not only got fame, money, everything, and when they interviewed him later in life when he was older, he said, I didn't bring him happiness. I remember.
A lot of them have said that.
Did not bring him happiness.
A lot of them have said that.
Anyway.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing about it. You think you're going to get something that you're not. Because the only thing that can really, and I'm saying this to everybody, the only thing that can really complete you is having a real, legit relationship with Jesus. There's nothing greater than that. There's nothing more powerful, no more solidarity, no more serenity than that. So I want y'all to think about that this week. What's stopping me from becoming that example? What's standing in my way? What have I made an idol over Jesus? What is more standing in my way? And I'm saying, you know what? This is more important than you, Lord. So I got to put you off to the side. You still there. I can see you in my periphery. I ain't lost sight of you. But right now, this is where my focus is at. And because of this, I can't make you center. I can't put you in the center because you're not the center. You're not my example. So if you're not my example, how can I be your example to others?
I don't see it.
And that's the hard part of this. And then you got to figure this out. How important is it that you become that example?
All done. Good.
So
That's
really it.
Telescope.
I'm good.
Telescope.
So man, I just you can
No.
stop. the recording.
Telescope.